Part 27. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 261. When the night parade of 100 demons of the Nura group appeared in this episode of Ushio and Tiger, it was not only the cartoonists and editors who were surprised, but also the readers. Because Nura Rikuo and the night parade of 100 demons of the Nura group are the protagonists of the monster manga Nura Oni, which has been completed in Shonen Jump for some time. Although many readers still complain about the problem of Feng Guangaiyu and Kuma getting stuck in the plot, they are quite looking forward to the content of the next comics. After all, the night parade of 100 demons led by Rikuo has a very strong fighting power and has defeated many powerful enemies. Facing the most powerful monster in history, the white-faced one, there must be a very fierce battle, right? Many readers are discussing the next battle online. Although the new comics did not appear, this did not hinder the reader's brutal imagination. As the person who secretly planned everything, Takahashi Makoto naturally read some of the online discussions, but the expression on his face made Yoshida, who came to collect the comic manuscript, feel quite bad. As expected. After Yoshida got the comic manuscript, he showed a helpless look on his face and turned to look at Makoto Takahashi, who was surfing the internet. You plan to draw it like this from the beginning, right? Don't show that you just found out expression. This is just the beginning. Makoto Takahashi turned to look at Yoshida with a weird smile on his face. My cat, use my name to scare those stupid mortals. Weren't you very impressive in the coffee shop before? Humph. Just tell them, Wait, why do you know this? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi in confusion, with an expression as if he saw his wife doing something with a strange man when he got home. You didn't let Sebastian install a bug on me. Huh? I have no interest in tracking and eavesdropping on the black-hearted cat. Takahashi Makoto quickly turned off the computer, picked up the comic manuscript from the table, and handed it to Yoshida with a weird smile. Although I am unhappy with your previous behavior of taking advantage of the power of others, I will be merciful and let you go for your improved wisdom. Thank you so much, Yoshida said thank you with gritted teeth while taking the comic. Of course, Yoshida did not start to look through the comics as usual, but looked at Takahashi Makoto with some expectation, and asked with a mysterious smile, Hey, Aiken, don't you care about the results of this comic? So, my cat, are you just a mortal after all? After mocking Yoshida without any concealment, Takahashi Makoto shook his head helplessly and pointed to the computer on the table. Look at the reaction from the readers, and you will know what the result is. Besides, is that kind of thing important? Hey, Aiken, have you forgotten? Yoshida was very unhappy with Takahashi Makoto's attitude. Not only because he wanted to hide the results, like a bad prank was discovered, but also because Takahashi Makoto didn't care about his comic results, which made Yoshida very dissatisfied. If the results are not good, being cut off? I don't care about that now. My beloved cat, you are really an idiot. Makoto Takahashi mocked Yoshida while picking up a paintbrush to draw on paper. Now the monster comics have reached the final stage. Even if they are cut off now, there are still about 10 chapters to finish. By the way, can the remaining content last for 10 chapters? That's true, No, Yoshida suddenly remembered something, looked at Makoto Takahashi with horror, and asked Makoto Takahashi with some uneasiness, Aiken, you seem to have said before that when Ushio and Tora is finished, the entire monster era will end, is that right? Of course. My beloved cat, it's already this time, and you are still asking such an idiotic question. Is it true that there was an error in the previous evolution method? Makoto Takahashi waved his hand impatiently. The draft has been handed over to you. You can choose to copy it here with the absolute memory ability, or you can use the teleportation technique to go back directly city. Anyway, don't interfere with my next plan here. Otherwise, you know what will happen. I know your sister. Explain it to me first. Yoshida put the comic manuscript on the table and walked to Makoto Takahashi with a gloomy face. It's okay for Inuyasha and Ushio Totoro, these two comics have reached the final stage, but the new serialization of Natsume seems to have been less than a year? You actually plan to finish Natsume? What? Didn't you always oppose it before, saying that the style of Natsume is not suitable for Shonen Jump? Makoto Takahashi looked like everything is your fault, which made Yoshida a little helpless. Besides, the reason why I chose to serialize Natsume is to make it the final chapter of the monster era, didn't I tell you before? This kind of thing. Yoshida suddenly refuted because of the dangerous smile on someone's face and the magic sword in his hand that had been unsheathed at some point. Yoshida wisely chose to change the subject. Now there is another question. You are so long-winded. Listen up, the last question. If you keep talking, you can go to see your great-great-grandfather in heaven. Makoto Takahashi put down the magic sword, turned around and stared at Yoshida. I have to draw comics, educate children, and frighten the ignorant people in the demon world who are ready to take action. Oh, by the way, I also received a request for help from Namek yesterday, so my beloved cat, you know, right? Time is quite tight. The first two reasons are fine, but the last two reasons sound right no matter how you listen. I mean Chang, you. Yoshida was about to launch a three-stage complaint as usual, but found that Takahashi Makoto had already reached for it. He picked up the magic sword and changed the topic decisively and wisely. Although you use several comics to fight together, have you ever considered that monsters in different worldviews have completely different combat capabilities? If they are forcibly fused together, a simple example is the last serialized Natsume, the strength of the monsters in the manga. Have you learned to think? But my beloved cat, you are still too naive. You still haven't discovered why I chose the manga Natsume as the final work of the yokai era. Gao Qiaocheng looked at Yoshida, who was thoughtful, and did not explain too much. He just sighed with regret. Well, it seems that it will take a long time to evolve from domestic cats to humans. As for the evolution to at my level, I estimate there is no hope in this life. I don't want to become a middle-class thinking human like you. After Yoshida complained, he stared at Makoto Takahashi again. Out of the responsibility of an editor, when there are obvious loopholes in the cartoonist's content, he should still do it, give reminders and suggestions. I won't talk about Slicker that has already appeared. After all, you have already drawn it, and it is too late to say anything now. I have seen the characters from Inuyasha appear in Tide and the Tiger before, although I don't have the specific content. Look, I think it should be similar to the previous ones, but among the monsters in the manga Natsume, except for the big monsters at the level of Nico-sensei, don't you think that the other monsters are too weak to participate in the encirclement and suppression of Sure Omen? In the battle with the enemy, he was completely turned into cannon fodder. Well, I know this. Although Takahashi Makoto said this, the brush in his hand did not stop and continued to move rapidly on the manuscript paper. So, my beloved cat, if you have anything to say, just say it directly, say it. Don't you think this will make the situation of Natsume very embarrassing? Although this will not take away the protagonist status of Zyashio and Ahu, but as a monster comic, the characters in Natsume are not too outstanding. It will readers who support Natsume are disappointed. This question was raised by Eiji Niizuma when Yoshida attended a manga artist gathering, and he wanted Yoshida to convey it to Makoto Takahashi. According to Eiji Niizuma's explanation, although he is looking forward to seeing the hyperfusion of the Phoenix Academy teacher, if the comic collapses due to the excessive use of the hyperfusion skill, this kind of behavior is not worth the gain. As partners and competitors, everyone will be quite unhappy. By the way, because of Eiji Niizuma, both the cartoonist side and the editor side now know about Makoto Takahashi's hyperfusion plan. Of course, the main reason was that a certain bad and sinister editor rebelled on the spot. My beloved cat, rest assured. I have thought about the problem you mentioned a long time ago. Makoto Takahashi did not mock Yoshida this time, stopped the brush in his hand, and let out a long sigh. Although I know that drawing like that will make many people dissatisfied, the ending has already been decided. This is all Stein's Gate's choice. Is it Stein's Gate again? Okay, I get it. After Yoshida heard this excuse, he immediately fell into a state of speechlessness. Watching Takahashi Makoto continue to lower his head and start drawing, Yoshida did not continue to ask anything, but returned to the table, picked up the manga manuscript and prepared to leave. However, just before Yoshida went out, he was stopped by Makoto Takahashi. Hey, my familiar cat, think about it carefully, why I chose Natsume as the final chapter of the entire era of monsters. Makoto Takahashi stopped painting, because his back was to Yoshida, so Yoshida could see it completely. The expression on Makoto Takahashi's face can't be seen. Go back and think about it carefully. What is the so-called era of monsters? This is the last reminder from the crazy cartoonist Phoenix Academy Kuma. So, my beloved cat. Someone threw the pencil sharpener on the table back and inserted it near the doorframe, which made Yoshida break into a cold sweat. If I ask such an idiot again next time, question, you can rest in peace for a long time. I was sorry yesterday. My mother said she would watch a TV series and then write a novel for me. But it turns out that one TV series can be played all day long. Because a certain cat was worried about being beaten, he didn't dare to resist his mother. At 11:45, his mother said, "You should write a novel." Can I finish a chapter if I don't read it for 15 minutes? A certain cat doesn't seem to be capable of such cruelty. So I'm going to post a chapter now, otherwise if my mom continues to watch TV series at night, I'm afraid I'll have to interrupt the update again. By the way, I'm complaining, Mom, you're cheating your son so much, Mom won't read this novel days anyway. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Email. Chapter 262. Although in Nura the strength of the Nura group is almost invincible because of the protagonist's halo, in the current Ushio Tutora, the Nura group did not show the fighting power that defies the heavens. Before the comics were released, many readers had imagined the scene of Nurarikyo leading the 100 demons to fight to the death with the white-faced one, but after the comics were actually published, many people felt a strong sense of powerlessness. The reason is not because there are not enough fierce fights in the comics, but because the strength of the white-faced one is too strong. So how strong is the white-faced one in Ushio Tutora? Except for the beast spear, the white-faced one cannot be eliminated. Even if the strength of all the monsters in the entire East continent was gathered 800 years ago, it could only severely injure the white-faced one. In the end, the injured white-faced one escaped to the pillar supporting the East continent. Now the only beast spear that can restrain the white-faced one has been shattered due to the improper use of Xiao Chao, and except for the reinforcements of the Nura group who just arrived, the only monster that can face the white-faced one head-on, Ahu, was also severely injured and thrown into the sea. This episode spent nearly half of the content to tell the battle between the white-faced one and the Nura group. No, it's better to say it's a one-sided massacre and slaughter than a battle. After Nurarikyo inherited the position of the third generation of the Nura group, he eliminated many powerful enemies. Many wandering monsters in the past will gradually join the Nura group, allowing the previously declining Nura group to rise again and become one of the overlords in the dark. However, even the powerful Nura group, facing the fully powered white-faced one, caused all the core members of the Nura group to be seriously injured, and some of the small monsters of the Nura group had already died without a trace. Even if Lu Shen used the strongest demon entanglement of the night parade of 100 demons, and used his body to contain the power of the 100 demons, and launched the strongest attack, he only cut one tail of the white-faced one. The fierce battle was as expected by many readers, but this tragic battle scene far exceeded the expectations of many readers. Although many readers believed at the beginning that Hao Winkuma would not be so crazy as to destroy all the monsters of the Nura group here, but judging from the current development, if there is no reinforcement, it is estimated that the Nura group will not only be severely damaged, but it is quite likely to be wiped out here. If all the monsters of the Nura group are destroyed. If Master Rikuo dies here. No. Cute Bingley-chan can't die. If the whole group is wiped out, I will have a good talk with Hao Winkuma about life. I swear I won't beat him to death. Many readers subconsciously muttered to themselves that if such a situation really happened, a large-scale parade to punish the heretic Hao Winkuma would definitely be held. Of course, as an accomplice of the comics, the magazine Shonen Jump must not be let off. When seeing Nura Rikuo being beaten by the white-faced one in the comics, many readers were inexplicably frightened. Especially when seeing the white-faced one preparing to make a fatal blow, many readers couldn't help but get nervous, and were very worried that Nura Rikuo would be killed. Although he used to be a protagonist, he usually has an immortality cheat, but as a guest character in another comic, this talent effect must have disappeared, so if no reinforcements appear at this time, Nura Rikuo will definitely die, and the Nura group will definitely perish. Bakura Yuha, the sharp air blade cut through the sky and took the fatal blow of the white-faced one for Nura Rikuo. After the smoke from the violent collision dissipated, Inuyasha, holding the demon sword Tessagá, stood in front of Rikuo with a gloomy face, staring at the white-faced man, Tisk. The monster who turned the whole world upside down, is you. Another ignorant monster. No, the smell on you should be a half-demon, right? The white-faced man showed a disdainful smile on his ferocious face. It's useless. The only beast spear that can threaten me has been destroyed. Now I am invincible. The one who saved Nura Rikuo was the male protagonist of the monster manga Inuyasha, the half-demon Inuyasha. And with the appearance of Inuyasha, the content of this episode ends here. Looking at this familiar scene, and the content of this episode ending in the same place, many readers, while relieved for Rikuo, also became more and more resentful of a certain cartoonist. Speaking of Hao Winkuma, can you not play like this every time, please? It just stopped at the most critical moment. If you want to know the follow-up content, you have to wait for another week. And according to the previous development, even if Inuyasha made a strong debut in this episode, it is estimated that he will be tortured badly in the next episode. Although the comic Inuyasha is now nearing its end, the protagonist and his party are preparing to fight a life-and-death battle with Naraku. Yoshida once persuaded Takahashi Makoto that although he wanted to show the power of the white-faced one, he should not use the suffering of the protagonists of other comics to set off, to such an extent, right? The resentment of readers is the delicious food that makes the soul feel extremely happy. Takahashi Makoto's answer made Yoshida, who had prepared a lot of arguments, die before he could succeed, and the whole person was completely messed up. That guy Aiken has gone out of the category of a normal person. Yoshida looked bitter and vomited bitterness to the colleagues gathered around him, although his talent in comics is also beyond the normal range. The category of human beings. Yoshida-kun, is it really okay to say that about Mr. Phoenix Academy? Hattori looked at Yoshida's frightened and hopeless expression, patted him on the shoulder comfortingly, and asked doubtfully, although I heard some rumors from Aiken Mumanjai, and some things I saw one time, but the Phoenix Academy teacher was a little strange, but at most he was just a bit of a loser. It's just, a bit of a bad idea, Yoshida screamed, causing everyone in the tavern to cast doubtful glances, while the person involved went into a roaring state without caring at all. We have already done that kind of thing, is it just a little bit? Stop joking. Yujiro and Hattori looked at each other. Although they didn't know what happened to Takahashi Makoto, but being able to make the evil editor Yoshida act so rude really made them quite curious. Although at the beginning, Yoshida insisted on sticking to the bottom line and refused to tell the whole story clearly, but under the instigation of a certain evil duo, he drank a few more drinks, and then did not even use the good intentions of a certain gossip duo. The drunken Yoshida told the whole story. After reading the new chapter that day, I had some guesses about Cheng's choice to end with Natsum. It was only about 8 o'clock at the time, and when I arrived at Cheng's house, it was just getting dark. Recalling what he had witnessed, the drunken Yoshida's face instantly turned pale, his lips trembled, and he continued to tell his two curious colleagues, "I saw that the door of Cheng's house was not closed. Okay, I originally planned to sneak in, but I didn't expect that guy Aiken to be offering incense to someone. Is it just that, after the gossip duo looked at each other, they were a little disdainful of Yoshida's timidity?" Hattori sighed and said, "I heard the two people from Ajumumenha said before that Takahashi Makoto's my parents have passed away." "That's not the case," Yoshida retorted loudly, with the corners of his mouth twitching, while muttering something like, "When the age of monsters is about to end, I need to seek blessings from the great gods of my clan. I hope I can kill this person. All human beings in the world," and other words, while offering tribute to his black and white photo. "Besides that guy Cheng, who else would burn incense to his photo?" I accidentally made some noise, and was discovered by Makoto Takahashi with a weird smile on his face. I was so scared that I vomited. Although the key evidence that determined the truth of the incident was completely blocked because Yoshida drank a little too much, two editors understood the meaning instantly. After smiling at each other, Yoshida did not dare to look up for a long time. Rumors emerged. When an editor went to a cartoonist's home to collect comic manuscripts, he was almost scared to death by the strange decoration in the cartoonist's house. The reason why I say it was almost because no one saw that a certain editor came out with a mysteriously wet strip. Water-stained pants. Although Yoshida expressed to Makoto Takahashi many times afterwards that he hoped that Makoto Takahashi could introduce some special channels and hire those legendary beings who can make people disappear without a trace, so that two loudmouthed colleagues can go to work after get off work one day. He became disconnected, but Makoto Takahashi, who wanted to become a partner of justice, righteously rejected Yoshida's request. By the way, what Yoshida did not expect was that it was not a certain editorial duo that really spread the news, but a certain natural black housekeeper who was responsible for the entire filming process, and a certain person who secretly planned everything, claiming to be someone who is a crazy cartoonist. It seems that the training of my beloved cat is not enough, in every sense of the word. Makoto Takahashi looked at the information collected by Sabas-chan in his hand and turned off the TV that was playing someone's dark history. He shook his head helplessly, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, just treat it as a pastime on the battlefield. At least before the plot of killing readers begins, let those ants and mortal bones enjoy the Last Supper and dessert. This battle, the real end, will be the day when I become a god. Ha 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 ha. Well, let me tell you all in advance, after the crazy July, a certain cat ushered in a desperate August. The work code word test, well, because there are 2 exams, so I have to spend time reading books and attending training classes, so the update speed and quantity cannot be improved during this period. I sincerely apologize. I work for 8 hours and attend training classes around the clock on weekends. There are a lot of books to read and a lot of exercises to do. So, adults, please don't complain about the update of a certain cat in the next period of time. Thank you all for your continued support, rest assured. This does not mean that a certain cat is going to be a eunuch, but I want to tell you the reason why the update is not effective. Well, this is the situation. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Male. Chapter 263. Although the content of the new episode has not been released, seeing that the once glorious protagonist Nurarikyo in Nuro was beaten in various ways in the new episode Ushio Tutora that has just been released, many readers feel very depressed while feeling the strong fighting power of the white-faced monster. When the plot of Ushio Tutora unfolded, the super fusion, especially when Inuyasha appeared. Many readers had already guessed that the crazy cartoonist named Hao Winkuma was about to do something very crazy, that is, to use the battle with the big monster white-faced monster to abuse the protagonists of all the monster comics. So when Inuyasha appeared in the comic Ushio Tutora, it triggered a lot of readers' speculation, and an interesting phenomenon also appeared. Less than half a day after the new issue of Shonen Jump was released, a large number of readers' prayers appeared on the internet, begging a certain unscrupulous cartoonist Hao Winkuma to let Touhou and Natsume go. It's okay for Inuyasha and Nura, but if the cute monster girls in Touhou are also beaten by the white-faced ones, I will never read the comics of the Great Phoenix Academy again. I feel the same way. Although I really hope to see the shameless good friends again, if the price is to be beaten by the white-faced ones, then I would rather Ryumu and Marisa not appear. If the second sister appears, the lethality may be more terrifying than the white-faced ones, allies may be killed. Although multiple characters appear at the same time, such content is very exciting, but every time I think about the fact that the Phoenix Academy will drag the monsters in Touhou into this battle, I feel very uneasy. Nearly 90% of readers are satisfied with the fierce battles in the comics, and they do not hide their worries. Because according to the current observations, there will be more characters that will appear next, and it may be the short-lived Touhou. Of course, many readers also made a wish, hoping that Mr. Howin would show mercy and spare the recently serialized manga Natsume. However, as soon as such remarks appeared, many readers also raised doubts. Other manga are better, but the monsters in Natsume, except for the currently very strong cat teacher, are completely cannon fodder. Even the monsters of the Nura group in Nura were slaughtered miserably. Once the monsters in Natsume appear, they have no ability to participate in the battle. I second the above. The strength of the monsters in Natsume is completely different from the previous manga. The gap is too big. Mr. Howin Kyoma doesn't even know this, right? Even if he knows, what's the problem? By the way, hasn't Mr. Howin done enough crazy things before? Instead of arguing whether it will appear or not, we might as well pray together, hoping that Mr. Feng Guangyuan will show mercy and not let the characters from Natsume and Touhou appear in Uo and Tora. This is the real issue we should care about, okay? Second. Request Mr. Feng Guangyuan to show mercy. Praying, if this really happens, I will write Mr. Feng Guangyuan's name in a small notebook. Does anyone know Mr. Feng Guangyuan's address? I will use the king's contract ability on him to stop him from going crazy. As the editor-in-chief of Makoto Takahashi, Yoshida naturally saw these news. Yoshida sneered at the readers' requests and prayers on the internet. Given Makoto Takahashi's recent almost crazy second-year state, is there any possibility of mercy? To be frank, asking for a prayer is completely useless. Makoto Takahashi has already decided how to draw from the beginning. But what that guy Aiken said before, couldn't it be true? Yoshida was very uneasy when he recalled that when the two of them discussed the end of the monster era, Makoto Takahashi's excited and expectant smile made him feel uneasy. However, looking at the sample magazine on the table, Yoshida smiled self-deprecatingly. Aiken once said that he would destroy about 90% of the monsters at the end of the monster era, but look at the latest episode. Lu Sheng and others were rescued at the critical moment, right? Tisk. That guy Aiken is definitely scaring me, hee. Speaking of Yoshida, do you think Makoto Takahashi is really just scaring you? As the editor-in-chief, Yoshida naturally saw the content of the new episode first. As soon as he got the comic manuscript, Yoshida immediately started to look through the content of Ushio and Tora, and even skipped the nearly completed Inuyasha. As expected, compared to the comic that is about to be finished, the content with Takahashi Makoto's brutal layout is much more popular. So what if he holds the demon sword? So what if he uses the big moves like Wind Wound and Bakuri Yuha? Just like the treatment of the Nura group, Inuyasha was also severely injured by the white-faced one, and compared to Nurarikuo, Inuyasha was injured much more seriously. The reason why Rikuo was seriously injured in the previous battle with the white-faced one was not only because he could not resist the white-faced one's strength, but also because he wanted to protect the monsters under his command. Fortunately, it's just this extent. After quickly reading this episode of Ushio and Tiger, Yashida breathed a sigh of relief. Although what Takahashi Makoto said before was extremely weird, Yashida was also prepared for the monsters that came in and wiped out the whole group in this episode, but none of these happened. But in this case, if we want to deal with the white-faced one, we can only do it like before? Then what are the efforts of Xiao Chao and Ahu before? Although he did not feel despair like the humans and monsters in the comics, Yashida was really looking forward to the development of the plot. Because in the comics, Ziokeo's father and mother proposed that after losing the beast spear, if they wanted to deal with the white-faced one, they could only guide the white-faced one to a certain range like before, and then gather the power of many wizards and monks to seal the white-faced one again, and seal it in the pillar part that supports the entire East continent. But the question now is, how to push the white-faced one into the barrier that can cast a seal. In addition to the battle where Inuyasha was beaten by the white-faced one, this episode of the comic left the biggest suspense at the end. Not to mention the readers who will read the comic in the future, even Yashida couldn't help but want to ask Takahashi Makoto about the next plot. Oh? Want to know? Takahashi Makoto looked at Yashida in confusion, nodded with satisfaction, and completely ignored Yashida's embarrassed face, and talked to himself. Even my cat who has been practicing with me for a long time can't resist this temptation. It seems that the previous choice is correct, and the effect is quite outstanding. Then when the next content appears, it will definitely be quite interesting. All of this is indeed the choice of Steins Gate. Yashida was a little helpless about being used as a test subject, but after hearing a certain keyword, he instantly had an ominous premonition. I say, Chen, in fact, I don't just want to know the next plot, but I want to know. My cat, with the structure of your brain, your thoughts are very easy to read. Takahashi Makoto looked down on Yashida with disdain, spinning the brush in his hand, and the words that those ignorant ants sent before, shout, humph. I've been preparing for a long time to get more pleasure. If you have the fantasy of showing mercy, which is a beautiful expectation and hope of human beings, let me, the crazy cartoonist Feng Guangai Yuan Kyoma, crush it with my own hands. Hey, Chen, what do you mean? Looking at Takahashi Chen with a broken smile on his face, Yashida's ominous premonition was confirmed. He was horrified and confused at the same time. After staring at Takahashi Chen for a long time, he finally couldn't help asking, Hey, Chen, I wanted to ask you before, why do you want to draw like this? The attitude of those ants and mortals towards witches made me very unhappy. Since the witch has been offended, there is no need for the so-called human beings or even the whole world to exist. Takahashi Chen seemed to have touched a switch, and the brush in his hand was directly broken. The resentful look on his face made Yashida feel like the god of death had passed by. Since you have chosen the hidden branch story of being slaughtered, you must bear the fate of being destroyed. It's not me who is wrong, but those ignorant ants and this twisted and corrupt world. Takahashi Makoto, you are just a cartoonist with a second-year syndrome, so please, don't show that I am already the king of the world expression on your face. If Brother Ogata sees you, you will definitely be kicked out again. Although I really want to say this, whether it is reason or physical intuition, I also gave Yashida a hint. After saying this, today's sunset will become the last scenery in my memory. My beloved cat, now is the moment to decide your fate. Do you choose to follow me to summon the evil of this world and become a being that destroys the world together? Or do you choose to be just a bystander, witnessing your own weakness and the destruction of the entire world? After venting his grievances, Takahashi Makoto turned his head and squinted his right eye to stare at Yashida, saying scary words with a weird smile on his face. Friendly reminder, because I estimate that you have not reached my level yet, so don't dream of repeating this plot by saving and loading the file. Before that, Ah-Cheng, I want to ask you first, have you decided to ignore the requests and wishes of those readers on the internet? Of course. Because things like showing mercy are not the style of my Phoenix inner Kyoma, Takahashi Makoto nodded and admitted as a matter of course, without any hesitation or guilt on his face, after all, Slaughter Feast is about to appear next. This is also the choice of Steins Gate. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 264. Perhaps it is related to the requests and prayers of many readers on the internet. In the next publication of Tide and Tiger, the murder of the protagonist that many readers were worried about did not appear. Inuyasha and others were only severely injured and did not die. Although I am very worried about the safety of Inuyasha and Rikuo, the entire chapter only shows the invincible strength and difficulty of the white-faced man. Although Xiao Chao escaped from Sheikoksha's memory killing, he still could not change the fact that the beast's spear was destroyed, and Ahu was still sleeping under the sea. This also means that the two real people in the comics, the protagonist is still lying among the corpses. Although the comic points out at the end that facing the invincible white-faced man, humans and monsters plan to seal the white-faced man back to the pillar supporting Dong Zhou again as they did hundreds of years ago, but as the comic says, it is quite difficult to attract white-faced people to a specific location. However, what makes readers feel fortunate is that there are no more random characters in the manga. Visually, Tuhao and Natsum escaped. Regarding the recent results of Tide and Tiger, the cartoonist said that he was under a lot of pressure. After all, Tide and Tiger used hyperfusion, and the ranking of these two chapters was directly eliminated from the original 7th place. Reached the top 3 positions. But this kind of pressure did not last long. Because when everyone gathered before, they were already fully aware of the hyperfusion tactics of comic joint operations. The same content twice in a row made many people on the cartoonist side relax. If Makoto uses this method again and lets characters from other comics infiltrate, everyone on the manga artist's side will say that Makoto Takahashi will definitely lose. After all, it's okay for other characters to make cameos occasionally, but if you continue to do this for a long time, the content of the comic will definitely collapse. This tactic is good when used as a surprise attack, but if it is intended to be used as a surefire means of turning the tables, the cartoonist said that Takahashi Makoto can stop drawing comics and directly change his job to become an adventurer to look for Dragon Balls and other things. What is Mr. Phoenix Institute planning to be famous for? After receiving the new issue of the comic sample, Eiji Niizuma quickly read Ushio and Toro with a look of complete confusion on his face. Although the contents of 2 consecutive chapters it's all like this, but I always feel that there will be some unexpected developments next, if the Phoenix Academy teacher really wants to win. After all, by allowing characters from other comics to infiltrate in this way, it is guaranteed to the maximum extent that the comic plot will not collapse, but this is also the limit. If the same content appears again, both the plot and tactical significance of the comic itself will be lost. Completely lost. So the next content. Niizuma Eiji put down the sample magazine, half squatted on the chair, just holding the brush, looking at his comic manuscript expectantly, with a strong fighting spirit in his eyes. Just let me take a look at the real killer move hidden by the Phoenix Academy teacher. The ones who also noticed something was wrong with the new wife Eiji were naturally the two of them, Ajumumenha's best friends. Hey, Chi-Ren, do you think Aiken will continue to let characters from other comics appear in the future? Landai spun the brush in his hand and looked at his frowning friend with confusion. If Aiken continues to draw like this, yes, I guess the next content will be the same as before. This should be possible, right? But that guy Aiken will definitely make some changes in the next chapter. The man with yellow-haired glasses put down the comic manuscript, pushed up his glasses, and wrote down what was written on the table. The content was handed to my good friend, but it doesn't matter, no matter what happens in the content of Akin's next chapter, I am full of confidence in the content of our next chapter. The next step will be left to you, the highest. Your speed has been getting faster and faster recently. Landai took over the comic plot and scanned it roughly, with a look of astonishment on his face. This content, Chi-Ren. Isn't it possible? Seeing the astonished look on his good friend's face, the man with yellow-haired glasses pushed up his glasses with some doubts and spread his hands feebly. If this content doesn't work, the new plot will have to wait until tomorrow. But the content of the new plot I conceived is actually not much different from this one. No, this plot is awesome. The shock on Landai's face turned into enthusiasm, and he interrupted his good friend's words without hesitation. Even if there are some random characters in Cheng's comics next, this plot will definitely work. We can definitely surpass Cheng's The Tide and the Tiger. Makoto Takahashi naturally also knows that continuously using the tactic of characters being beaten up after entering randomly is not a long-term solution. Therefore, the content of the new chapter has naturally been changed. Although it has not been officially published yet, I don't know the effect of readers after watching it. However, based on the performance of experiment number 1 Yoshida after watching it, the visual effect is outstanding. But at this level, I always feel that there is still something missing. After seeing Yoshida off, Takahashi Makoto did not continue drawing comics, but lowered his head and pondered, the end of the era of monsters, the departure of the commander. I should definitely use that one at this time, but I still feel a little uncomfortable. Makoto-kun? What happened? Rina looked at the frowning Makoto Takahashi and asked curiously, did you bully Mr. Yoshida again? Why did you watch Mr. Yoshida leave with red eyes before? Although it is my responsibility to educate my cat, bullying is totally out of the question. I just feel that I will need the help of Ogata Slime this time, which really makes me feel unhappy. Takahashi Makoto sighed, turned to look at Rina, and showed a depressed look on his face, which, I remember I have said it many times, you still need to meditate for a long time now. It's already this time, go and meditate quickly. But Makoto. Looking at Takahashi Makoto's tired face, Rina showed a trace of worry on her face. When she wanted to say something, she was interrupted by Takahashi Makoto without any hesitation. Go and rest. It's already this time, these days you. Takahashi Makoto suddenly stopped scolding, and showed a helpless look on his face. You don't have to worry about me, go and rest. If the plan is not wrong, you can rest for a long time after the end of the monster era. Hey, I know. Rina looked at Takahashi Makoto's serious face, stuck out her tongue, and turned back to the bedroom obediently. Just before the door closed, Rina threatened Takahashi Makoto with her fist. Makoto, you must go to bed early. Otherwise. Who gave you the courage to challenge me? Takahashi Makoto turned his head and stared at Rina, his tone full of caring anger. Next is a great opportunity for me to ascend to the altar, so go to bed, stupid witch. On the day when the new issue of Shonen Jump was released, Yoshida lost his usual calmness and stared at the phone restlessly. Whenever the phone rang, his heart would tighten, and the uneasy look on his face made his colleagues around him extremely curious. Yoshida did not explain too much to his colleagues' concerned greetings. Anyway, the comics have been published and sold now, so there is no point in saying anything more. Seeing that Yoshida was unwilling to elaborate, the editors naturally did not ask too many questions. They directly picked up the sample issue that was about to be handed over to the cartoonist and quickly flipped through it. Although Yoshida did not say it, several colleagues roughly guessed that Yoshida's abnormal behavior was definitely related to the manga of the cartoonist Hao Winkuma. To be precise, it should be related to the content of the new episode Uo and Tora. Look. I am looking forward to your performance. Yoshida looked at his colleagues around him and began to look through the content of Uo and Tora, with a dark smile on his face, and muttered in his heart, "I won't remind you that Aiken has hidden a killer move in this episode. Eh? This is... No way. So cruel. Alas, the content of this episode is really... No way. The content of the previous series was actually foreshadowing? This is too exaggerated." Just as Yoshida maliciously guessed, the editors began to exclaim one after another after looking through the content of Uo and Tora. Seeing the astonishment of the crowd, Yoshida curled his lips in disdain. With a contemptuous smile on his face, Yoshida completely forgot that when he saw the content of this episode at Takahashi Makoto's house, he was even more surprised than everyone else now. "Sorry, everyone, I haven't been feeling well these 2 days. Alas, it's unfortunate for the god to play the hospital dungeon alone. But the good news is that a certain cat has decided to give up an exam, not to participate in training and study, and concentrate on writing, so there is a little more time. Forget about exams, ha 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 ha." A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 265. The reason why Yoshida feels nervous is because the content of this chapter, Tide and Tiger, is too cruel. As expected, just one day after the new issue of Shonen Jump was released, the editorial department was once again attacked by a phone storm. It has also been mentioned in the comics before that the white-faced one is too powerful. Even if it messes with Inuyasha and Nura's group, without the Beast Spear, and gathers the strength of the entire Eastern Continent monsters, it still can't be harmed. Half of the reason why the white-faced man was successfully sealed back then was because the white-faced man was severely injured by the Beast Spear. The other half was because the white-faced man planned to continue sealing to escape the pursuit of the Beast Spear and many monsters, and voluntarily entered the barrier. But now the white-faced man does not have the restraint of the Beast Spear, and he is not seriously injured. He will not run to the designated place to be sealed like a fool. So under the current circumstances, even if you want to seal the white-faced man, it is extremely difficult. After reading the previous chapter, many readers have had a lot of discussions on the internet about how to eliminate the white-faced ones. Every time some creative ideas come up, they are overturned by others. This kind of discussion never stops until the new chapter of the comic appears. As a loyal fan of the Ushio and Tora manga, Aoki has been following this manga since it was serialized. Compared to other comics, Aoki prefers the wild style of this comic. When discussing how to eliminate the white-faced man on the internet, Aoki also expressed his own reasoning several times. Although every idea he proposed was refuted by other comic fans, Aoki was not angry and continued to analyze, trying to solve the problem in the new comics. Before the content of a chapter comes out, make a prediction. When the comic was released, Aoki bought it as soon as possible. Although it only lasts for a week, Aoki has also conceived a lot of comic plots, so now he can't wait to open the comic. On the one hand, he naturally wants to know the follow-up content of the comic, and on the other hand, he wants to read the comic. Will the next plot of the Phoenix Academy's murderous plot develop as I imagined? Seeing that there are no interfering characters in the manga, Aoki felt a little regretful. Previously, he thought that the cute girl monster from Touhou or Natsum would appear in the next chapter. Natsum and the monsters who came to help with the Friends book, it's a pity that these are not included in the content of this chapter, but the content as the title makes Aoki a little worried. What is the meaning of tragic battles and travels? Could it be, as everyone had guessed before, that the general of the Phoenix Academy will harvest a large number of monster heads in this chapter? Aoki looked at the title with a puzzled look on his face. Whispered in a low voice, and the meaning of the strip, don't say that in the content of this sentence. Xiao Chao and the others suddenly exploded into the small universe, killed the white-faced man in one fell swoop, and then set off for a trip or something. If it were really painted like this, Phoenix Academy, the standard is too bad, right? Although reading comics in class is a bad thing, Aoki was too curious about the next content. He covered the comic book with the textbook and pretended to pay attention to the class, but 90% of his mind was completely focused on the comic book. Well, you still have to pay some attention to the teacher. Facing the powerful white-faced man and the big monster who wants to destroy the world, both humans and monsters know that this is a moment of life and death, and they have to put aside their racial prejudices and unite together. Coupled with the previously scattered beast spear fragments, the influence of the white-faced man on humans and monsters was expelled. The deeds of Xiaoxiao and Ahu, who were wandering between humans and monsters, gradually began to spread, igniting the alliance between humans and monsters. Determination to fight against the white-faced one. Is this the meaning of traveling? What a scam! Aoki looked at such content in the comics, and his head was full of black lines. If he hadn't worried that it was class time, he would have scolded him immediately. What do you think, the master of the Phoenix Academy? How could the travel deeds of Xiaoqiao and Ahu, a good pair, spread to the whole world so quickly? Even if you want to drag monsters and humans to the same front, even if Xiaoqiao and Ahu tiger as the protagonist, isn't this development too exaggerated? Disdainful, Aoki complained softly, but chose to continue reading. Although he was a little dissatisfied with this place, when he thought about the next content, humans and monsters would unite to defeat the white-faced man, Aoki felt a little bit expect. But when he turned to the next page and saw the scene in the comic, Aoki was completely stunned. The monsters knew the plan of Zimu and other monks, so the monsters as allies launched the most tragic battle plan against the white-faced man in order to drag the white-faced man to the designated place of seal. In order to push the white-faced man to the designated place, a large number of monsters completely ignored the difference in their own strength and launched suicide attacks on the white-faced man again and again. Although the white-faced man can kill hundreds of monsters with just a wave of his tail, tens of thousands of monsters are not afraid of death at all, and they still kill the white-faced man one after another, just to push the white-faced man towards the location of the seal. Even if you sacrifice a lot of lives, you can only push the white-faced man a little further. Oh no, this is the way to go. Looking at the numerous monsters in the comics, who were completely disregarding life and death, Aoki felt his eyes a little sore. He knew that rushing towards the white-faced man would result in certain death, but the monsters really didn't show any signs of death. Of fear. It's really too crazy and too tragic, right? Not only monsters, but humans, or monsters who had been helped by Xiaoqiao and Ahu before also appeared in this battlefield. A certain pilot who once died because of a monster rushed out of the underworld and crashed into the white-faced man. The Yukiana monsters who had been influenced by the Neep tide also appeared on the battlefield. In the content of this episode, Xiaoqiao and Ahu did not appear, but during their journey against the white-faced man, the humans and monsters that this good pair helped basically all appeared and attacked the white-faced man. Although it was still unable to cause harm to the white-faced man, it pushed the white-faced man closer to the place where it was sealed. Even if it was just a flash in the pan, even if it was killed quickly, both humans and monsters tried their best. Ghost. Blast. Everyone, move forward. Even if the ammunition runs out, there's still the plane itself, you bastard monster. Even if the effect was minimal, no monsters or humans gave up. They pushed the white-faced man back bit by bit at the cost of their lives, from hundreds of meters away from the ceiling barrier at the beginning to a few meters away now. Compared to the white-faced man, both monsters and humans are extremely weak beings, but in this sentence, this seemingly weak alliance of humans and monsters actually pushed the powerful white-faced man away to the edge of the ceiling barrier. Aoki, who was immersed in the fierce battle, suddenly felt someone pushing him around him. He raised his head in confusion and saw that the eyes of the whole class were focused on him. When he found that the teacher was staring at him, he couldn't help but be startled, subconsciously. Put the comic book away and look at the teacher in confusion. Aoki-san, are you feeling unwell? The teacher put down the textbook and looked at Aoki in confusion, Do you need a break? Uh, I. Aoki's voice was a little hoarse and his nose was a little sore. He was obviously about to cry. Alas. Although your exam is approaching, don't stay up late reading. The teacher looked at Aoki and shook his head helplessly. Usually work harder. The teacher began to instill his educational philosophy, but Aoki couldn't listen at all, because he was still immersed in the comics and that tragic battle. Oh, the content of this sentence. Mr. Huang Mao Glasses put down the sample magazine, took off his glasses, and lay on the sofa a little weakly. That guy Aiken, although he was drawing steel refining before, I know he's very capable of sensationalizing, but isn't he a bit too cruel this time? That's what I'm talking about. Chi-Ren, are you crying? Lan Dai watched his good friend wipe his eyes constantly, suppressed the sadness in his heart, and looked at his good friend with contempt. Speaking of which, this is just a cartoon. Hey, Supreme, can you look in the mirror before you speak? It seems like your eyes are redder than mine. After the yellow-haired glasses man complained about his good friend, he patted his cheek hard with a melancholy look on his face. He said, "Oh, I miscalculated this time. I thought that Aiken would use another character to infiltrate again, but I didn't expect to choose to unfold the plot like this. Although I am very reluctant, the content of Aiken's words is indeed even better than our previous episode. Hey, Chi-Ren, do you still remember the bet we signed before?" Seeing a certain contract on the table, Lan Dai's face suddenly became a little ugly. If we lose, if so. Hey. No, we absolutely can't lose. The yellow-haired glasses man suddenly jumped up from the sofa like a cat whose tail was stepped on, being used as a slave by Aiken, the guy who hit him 20 feet. Even if we don't die, we will definitely go crazy. So you have to think carefully about how to draw the next comic so that you won't lose to that guy Aiken. Lan Dai also looked at his good friend with a pale face, and said with a sad face, It is completely conceivable that once I become Aiken's slave, he will let me do some. Ahem, Landai-kun, your face suddenly turned crimson. Do you think Takahashi Makoto would let you do something embarrassing with your voice actor's sister? This is basically the situation, Makoto Takahashi said to Yoshida on the other side of the phone, completely ignoring Yoshida's complaints. Although a happy ending is a very good suggestion, but my favorite cat, what do you think? Would I do this mercifully? Huh, that's so sweet. Hey, the content this time is already very tragic. Many readers were crying when they called to complain. Yoshida yelled on the phone, "You actually said that this level is not enough. Man. Human beings cry out in despair and throb with sorrow, but they are my favorite sweets." Makoto Takahashi squinted his eyes, signaled silence to the man sitting in front of him, and continued talking to the phone. Of course, in order to comfort those weak humans, I kindly prepared a big gift. Big gift? Are you so kind? Yoshida looked quite suspicious. In this case, I will come over and have a talk with you later. My beloved cat, I'm sorry, it's not possible today. Takahashi Makoto didn't explain too much, but chose to hang up the phone directly, and said to the man in front of him with a smile, "Then let's continue the previous conversation. What do you think of my proposal, Four-Eyed Fox?" It is said that a certain cat has the ability of prophecy. When I wrote Ushio and Tora before, I just wanted to be nostalgic. I didn't expect that there would be a new show. Haha, has it really begun to control the world? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 266. A category that is incomprehensible to common sense, an area that mortals cannot enter. I am the loneliest existence in the world after all. Don't let the so-called common sense constrain your wings of freedom to soar in the sky. Don't let the childish emotions of human beings pollute your noble souls. because our family has talents and talents that mortals can't match. From the day he was born, he was destined to bear the curse and resentment of the entire world. Yoshida, who was looking at the manga manuscript, had black lines all over his head. There is absolutely no problem with the manga manuscript, and Yoshida is also familiar with Takahashi Makoto's frequent Chuyuni-style speeches, but the important issue is: speaking of Chuyunibu, does it really have to be cultivated from an early age? Makoto Takahashi, does Rina-chan know how you educate your children? If Brother Ogata finds out about this, I guarantee you will be kicked out of the house again. Yoshida, who came to collect manga manuscripts, accidentally triggered the special mission of Takahashi Makoto Educates Children. Yoshida originally planned to leave immediately after receiving the manga manuscript, but because he was curious about how Makoto Takahashi would raise his children, he did not leave in a hurry. So, hey, Chen, are you sure you are taking care of your child and not cultivating some special personality for your child? Although it was surprising that Takahashi Makoto's two children were amused by Takahashi Makoto's words, Yoshida said that he really couldn't stand it anymore. Is this Nima taking care of a child? Doesn't it sound like you are training the successor of Chuyunibu? My companions are cats, so how do you think they should be trained? Do you want to tell them from childhood that when they grow up, they will become a new generation of ex-shadows, or become the ex-thief king of a certain great root, or become the ex-warrior who saves the world and protects the earth? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with disdain and said helplessly, if my son dares to say something like I am the man who wants to become the pirate king in front of me in the future, I want to be Hokage's man, or I want to be a partner of justice and other shameful words, I will definitely teach him how to be a new man. At least he will aspire to become the demon king who destroys the world, or should I become the master of the Crystal Palace with tens of thousands of people? No, 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 if it is really what you think, I think it would be better for the world if your son becomes the Pirate King or Hokage or something. At least a dream full of positive energy is much better than a Chuyunibu scumbag already. Although I think so, when I was watching the stars at night, I already discovered the fate of this child. Makoto Takahashi showed a trace of grief and anger on his face, and raised the baby boy in his hand high. See Kaiji, your future will be to become a professional Go player under the tutelage of the strongest chess player in Dongjo, Ta Yaoren. Although you can become a chess master in the future, you will become a ghost with a ghost in the past. The supporting characters around me, this abominable fate that cannot be escaped, is also the choice of Steins Gate. CG. Chen, is your son called Takahashi CG? Why does this name sound a bit? Yoshida put down the comic manuscript and looked at Takahashi Chen with a gossipy face. Speaking of Chen, I forgot to ask before, what are the names of your two children? My beloved cat, Takahashi CG, how can it be the name of my child? And after you find out the child's real name, you will definitely write it down in that little book when you go back. Takahashi Makoto's face, a trace of vigilance flashed across his face. Humph. After all, it's just mortal wisdom. I've already seen through your conspiracy. See through your sister. By the way, isn't that DN a comic created by you yourself? The real authentic small book should be in your hands. Okay, Yoshida angrily complained in 3 paragraphs, and the combo continued. Starting up. Besides, I'm just asking for the child's name. Who would do such a crazy thing as killing a child? Speaking of your son's name, if it's not Takahashi CG, could it be Ogata? My beloved cat. Makoto Takahashi held the child with one hand, and the magic sword in the other hand was already pressed against Yoshida's throat. His face showed the exclusive expression of a villain when killing someone. You know there are too many. So. Chen, you finished the comic draft very quickly this time. Didn't you ask Ding Ding and the 4 of them to work overtime again? Without hesitation, Yoshida interrupted Takahashi Makoto's words. He tried his best to change the subject, Please Chang, please be a little considerate of us mortals. If Ding Ding and the others go on strike again, I'll see how you can serialize 3 comics at the same time by yourself. Humph. Don't underestimate the 4-person team. Whether it's Journey to the West or RPG, it's clear that 4 people are the king. Makoto Takahashi pointed at the manga manuscript on the table with his sword. My companion is the cat. Take that back to the organization quickly. A 4-eyed fox will come over later to discuss some interesting things. Interesting thing, I can't pretend I didn't hear this. Yoshida wanted to pack up the manga and leave, but when he heard Takahashi Makoto say this, his curiosity and worry were aroused at the same time. Speaking of which, what the hell is that so-called comfort gift you said on the phone yesterday? That's a taboo matter, Makoto Takahashi said and ignored Yoshida. He turned to look at the clock on the wall with a look of displeasure on his face. Why is that guy Sabas-chan still dawdling? It's just that. It's just a message. Does it take that long? Is it possible to kill all those guys on a whim? It's a disgusting act to steal people's heads. Sebastian, who was being talked about by Makoto Takahashi, was now facing the people on the cartoonist side, and he completed Makoto Takahashi's task of delivering the message with a smile. That's what the master asked me to convey. He took out his pocket watch and looked at it, then Sebastian bowed slightly to everyone. Well, since the mission has been completed, please excuse me while I take my leave. Tisk. Both Cheng and this butler named Sebastian are quite weird guys. After Sebastian left, the silver-haired young man Fukuda slammed the table and glanced at his companions around him. Now that Cheng has said so, what do you think? I'm very upset. Cheng is really too underestimating. The good friends showed the same indignation on their faces, and the synchronization rate was off the charts. Although we also admit that the content of the previous episode of Ushio Tutora is very exciting, but this does not mean that we have completely failed. But how will the monsters in Natsume appear in Ushio Tutora? I really want to see it. Nazuma Eiji was holding a bunch of drinks, with a mouthful of shouting many straws, sucking the mixed drink vigorously. Hey, Mr. Fukuda, why didn't Mr. Howin let the monsters that appeared in Touhou also make guest appearances in Uo and Tora? They are all monsters. Huh? How do I know about this? The silver-haired boy looked at Eiji Nazuma speechlessly. Then Mr. Nazuma, since Aiken said that the characters of Natsume will appear in the next comics, do you think Aiken will adopt the same method as the previous appearance of Inuyasha and other characters? Impossible. With his hands crossed on his chest, Eiji Nazuma suddenly jumped up from the chair, put one foot on the table, and declared loudly, Teacher Howin will never adopt such a method. Because once such a method is adopted, the whole plot will be dragged down. The same question, Yoshida also asked Makoto Takahashi before leaving, and the result was unsurprisingly despised by Makoto Takahashi. Hey, my cat, I just feel that you are the real villain. Makoto Takahashi deliberately made a horrified expression, took several steps back, and kept a distance from Yoshida. You actually thought of dragging the cute monster girls into Ushio and Tora to kill them. Tisk, tisk, your taste is really special. Eh? But didn't you say that Ushio and Tora will be the final chapter of the monster era? If so, then the Touhou series, which is also a monster comic, you don't plan to let the characters in it appear. Yoshida completely ignored Makoto Takahashi's ridicule. After all, he was used to being ridiculed. By the way, my cat, have you read Touhou carefully? Makoto Takahashi turned around and took out a few Shonen Jump from the bookshelf and forcefully stuffed them into Yoshida's arms. The fighting style is different, the fighting system is different. What do you think will happen if you forcefully combine these two different types of comics? Oh, I'm really worried about your future children, if they inherit such an IQ. I don't want to be criticized by you for this question. Yoshida held the magazine and looked at Takahashi Makoto with a frown, but that's not right. According to your statement that you don't adopt the Touhou series, the monsters in Natsume are also very weak, and it seems that they shouldn't appear in Uo and Tora. Even weak monsters have their moments of shining brilliantly. Takahashi Makoto suddenly sighed with a sad face, and then ordered Yoshida to leave. Anyway, it's not the time to tell you now. When the time comes, you will understand, my cat. In fact, Takahashi Makoto had considered dragging the characters from Touhou into Uo and Tora, but unfortunately he didn't find a suitable entry point. If they are forcibly merged together, the comics will become incongruous, so I can only regretfully choose to give up using the Touhou series as the material for Superfusion. But it is also because the Touhou series was mentioned many times that I thought of that interesting plan. I have to say that all of this is the choice of Steins Gate. Ha 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 ha. After Takahashi Makoto expelled Yoshida from the barrier, he couldn't help laughing wildly when he thought of what he had planned with the four-eyed fox. And just at this time, the phone rang, and the caller ID was the four-eyed fox that Takahashi Makoto mentioned. Ahem, four-eyed fox, I'm Chu Xian. Ahem, let me say sorry first, recently I'm a little tight on time, so I post directly after typing every day. I will definitely read the book review area, but it's unlikely that I will reply completely. I hope you will understand. If you have any thoughts, just leave a message directly. I will read it, whether it's good or bad, I will read it carefully. Thank you all for your support. Meow, that's all. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do SD Mao. Chapter 267. Since the comic Ushio and Tora entered the countdown to its completion, as if by appointment, the comic Inuyasha has also entered the tense final battle, while Natsume has maintained a tepid trend, infiltrating into the hearts of every reader little by little. Although Yoshida had repeatedly advised Takahashi Makoto not to be so crazy as to finish 3 comics at the same time, he should finish them one by one. Unfortunately, Yoshida, who is called the dependent cat, was completely defeated by Takahashi Makoto, who is the Demon King, in terms of order, so it is natural that Yoshida's advice was completely ignored by Takahashi Makoto. Although such a crazy move made Yoshida deeply uneasy, judging from the serialization results, not only did no accidents occur in the first month, but it once gloriously occupied the top 3 seats, but Yoshida still couldn't help but want to persuade Takahashi Makoto to give up this crazy plan. Hey, Chen, have you ever thought about finishing 3 comics at the same time? Will this make Shonen Jump very difficult? Yoshida tried his best to persuade him, but he was met with unmoved contempt from Makoto Takahashi. Helplessly, Yoshida had to change his way of persuasion. Besides, to finish 3 comics at the same time, Chen, you need to think about the rhythm of the plot development. For example, the comic Natsume is serialized in the form of a unit drama, so if you want to finish it, there is not much problem, but what about the 2 comics Ushio to Tora and Inuyasha? The plot of Ushio to Tora has reached the moment of the decisive battle, while the plot of Inuyasha has only reached the point where Inuyasha and others start fighting with Naraku. The reason why Yoshida tried his best to dissuade Makoto Takahashi from stopping this crazy behavior, in addition to considering it from the perspective of the editorial department, is more from the perspective of a comic fan. In order to achieve the effect of finishing 3 comics at the same time, whether it is delaying the plot of Ushio to Tora or cutting a lot of the plot of Inuyasha, Yoshida is unwilling to see it. In short, Yoshida didn't want Makoto Takahashi to achieve the so-called synchronization rate and cause the 3 well-received comics to end in a hurry. My cat, I told you before, Makoto Takahashi sighed helplessly and put down his brush when he saw Yoshida's almost crazy look. Unfortunately, he was interrupted by Yoshida without any hesitation before he could say anything. Anyway, listen to me first. Unconsciously, Yoshida used the special catchphrase he usually used when getting along with the little otter. Because of anger and impatience, his momentum temporarily overwhelmed Makoto Takahashi. Don't tell me that there is a search engine in my head, and don't say that this is the choice of the door of destiny, Makoto Takahashi. you are just a cartoonist. Whether you admit it or not, in my eyes you are just a normal human being. Did I say anything wrong? Why are you looking at me like this? Tisk tisk tisk, my cat, you are really a good consciousness. In order to protect the interests of the organization, actually made a breakthrough at this time, and clashed with me without fear. This courage is really worthy of praise. Takahashi Makoto was like a hidden villain, not sparing his applause, but showing a crazy smile on his face. In order to praise your stupid courage, I should naturally go all out to show my will and the true strength of the crazy cartoonist Feng Guangai Yuan Xiongzhen. In order to achieve the effect I expected, my cat, I decided not to be a human anymore. Not to be a human anymore. Yoshida heard Takahashi Makoto say this, but the corners of his mouth kept twitching. Although he had complained about Takahashi Makoto before, Yoshida had always regarded Takahashi Makoto as a non-human existence from his soul to his heart. By the way, do normal humans have that kind of monster-like military value? By the way, do normal humans have the diplomatic skills to command the cat and dog army? My beloved cat, this is the comic you have been longing for. Now I will entrust it to you for the last time in my mortal body. Makoto Takahashi looked up at the ceiling, and his hand unconsciously touched his left eye with an eye patch. His tone was full of helpless self-mockery. Comics, feelings, and all experiences are like arranged world lines. I can feel that many people are silently watching my every move, in that invisible dimension. For Makoto Takahashi's second year Yoshida, who was completely immersed in the comics, said that he had no intention of complaining at all. As an editor, his duty is to give some constructive suggestions to cartoonists. Regarding Makoto Takahashi's practice of completing comics at the same time, Yoshida felt that he had done his best to comfort him, but it was obvious that Makoto Takahashi completely ignored it. Yoshida's method was too good. In order to cooperate with Makoto Takahashi's skills in completing comics at a high speed, Yoshida gradually mastered the skills of quickly flipping through comics. While Takahashi Makoto was still immersed in some strange fantasy, Yoshida quickly read through the comic manuscript in his hand. Just like before, the two comics Ushio Tutora and Inuyasha are still fierce battles between monsters. They maintain the previous level and should not have much problem in maintaining the current ranking of comics. But why is Natsum in this episode? Since its serialization, Natsum has been developed in the form of a unit drama. Although the center revolves around the existence of the famous Book of Friends, the content of each episode can be regarded as an independent story. But this time, Yoshida was a little confused about Natsum. The story that can be told in one episode was completed by Makoto Takahashi in 2/3 of the comics. As for the remaining 1/3, Mr. Nico, I wanted to ask you before, aren't monsters powerful? Why are the monsters I have encountered so far? Natsum, who returned the monster's name, lay on the ground powerlessly and asked the long-standing question in his heart to the cute Mr. Nico next to him, most of them are weak monsters. There is a reason for that, meow. Mr. Nico rolled on the ground and rolled to Natsum's side, because of what happened more than 10 years ago. More than 10 years ago, Natsum sat up suddenly and picked up Mr. Nico. Hey, Mr. Nico, what happened? According to Makoto Takahashi's inertia, the content of this episode of Natsum ended here without any surprise. Although Yoshida has roughly guessed that the thing that the cat is talking about should be the cooperation between monsters and humans to kill the white-faced man, this also means that Natsum will also become one of the materials for Ushio and Tora super fusion, but this kind of half-knowledge is really annoying. It is completely conceivable what the reader's reaction will be after the content of this episode appears. As the first reader to jump into the pit, Yoshida said that Takahashi Makoto's taunting skills have been maxed out. But Makoto, is this really okay? Yoshida put down the comic manuscript, looked at Makoto Takahashi who was still immersed in the wonderful feeling, and asked with some doubt, although I have guessed before that your Fengguangai Yuan Kyoma will sooner or later reach out to Natsum, but now in Ushio and Tiger, it is the content that Xiaoshio and Ahu join forces to fight the white-faced man. Is this the right time for the monsters in Natsum to interfere? Hey, 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 Makoto, are you listening to me? Listening to the will of God with a mortal body, I have become a saint at this moment. Makoto Takahashi, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly shouted, which scared Yoshida. Takahashi Makoto stood on a chair, looking down at Yoshida, and sighed, "Alas, my cat, I was summoned by the God of creation just now, and had to break through the dimension and listen to the will of God. That sir said that when I can use superfusion calmly, he will give me the stone mask, and then I can break free from the shackles of fate and become a true god. Ha ha ha." That sir, Yoshida looked up at the ceiling with a confused look on his face, and shook his head helplessly. "I knew it, as expected, Chen, your second-year disease is incurable. And I don't care about the stone mask, I care about the content of Natsum next. What is it? Foolish mortal, do you think I will reveal the secret hidden in the whole world in the next chapter? Too sweet, too sweet. No sacrifice, no gain. If you want to get something, you must pay something. This is the so-called equivalent exchange, the so-called truth." Takahashi Makoto squinted his eyes and looked at Yoshida. "Want to know? Sure, when the people of the whole world swear allegiance to the great Phoenix Court Kuma, swear to kneel and lick my solace, and are willing to become my puppet slaves, I might consider sharing this secret kindly. Ha 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 ha. Isn't it rumored that Chuyunibu can save the world? Why does this Chuyunibu in front of me, let alone the lofty idea of wanting to become a righteous partner to save the world, want to become the demon lord who eliminates humanity and destroys the world wholeheartedly?" Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto, who was laughing wildly, and thought like this. As Yoshida expected, the information accidentally revealed in Natsum this time opened the minds of many readers. However, Takahashi Makoto also inevitably chose to hide, and in the Natsum that has been published for a month, it just keeps people's appetite. Every time the cat teacher wants to narrate that past, it is always interrupted by various accidents, such as a little monster stealing the friend book, such as getting drunk, such as, in short, the readers have been waiting for more than a month, but still have nothing to gain. Ahem, it seems that it is not right to say this. In fact, there are some gains, such as Fengguangai Yuan Xiongzhen is a pit god, such as Fengguangai Yuan Xiongzhen is a pit demon, such as Fengguangai Yuan Xiongzhen. In short, the readers have a new understanding of the bad characteristics of Fengguangai Yuan Xiongzhen. Ahem, everyone, I said that there was something going on at home recently, so the update may be interrupted. I'm sorry for yesterday. The incident happened suddenly. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 268. Looking at the comic Ushio and Tiger serialized in the new issue of Shonen Jump, many readers suddenly felt a sense of emotion in their hearts. It seems that this time they were fooled by the cartoonist named Houern Kyoma. The reason why most readers have such feelings is still because of the comic Ushio and Tiger. In the comic, countless monsters launched suicide bombings regardless of sacrifice, and finally successfully forced the white-faced one into the edge of the barrier without counting casualties. At the same time, feeling Zyokyo's intentions and condensing the wishes of humans and monsters, the fragments of the beast spear gathered together from all directions, and after the fragments condensed, they resurrected again. And Ahu, who was severely injured by the white-faced one before, was inspired by the so-called encouragement of love, and resurrected from the sea again, and put on a handsome armor. Although holding the beast spear can exert extraordinary combat power, what you have to pay is your own soul. When the holder of the beast spear, after paying the entire soul, will lose reason and beast, and become a being like Ahu. The beast spear that condensed Yulong's hatred, after devouring the soul of the beast spear holder, will also devour the holder's memory. The only thing left is the hatred for the white-faced one. These beast spear holders who have been transformed into beasts have become exactly the same as Ahu. In the last battle, in order to help Ahu and to cut off the hatred in their hearts, these beast-transformed monsters united together and became the armor on Ahu's body before. Although it is understood that the moment of the decisive battle is coming, readers have more doubts, because the characters in Natsum have not appeared so far. Although there have been hints in Natsum that there will be characters in the next Ushio and Tiger, until Xiao Chao and Ahu joined forces to push the white-faced one into the barrier and start a life-and-death battle, the characters in Natsum still did not appear. There was no intrusion before the decisive battle began. Does this mean that it will appear in the decisive battle? But is there really no problem with drawing like this? With the super strength of the white-faced one, if he really appeared at that time, he would definitely be killed without a complete body. The cartoonist Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma is indeed a madman. The readers have updated their impressions of him while waiting and expecting. However, some of the super expanded plots in the comics still make readers dumbfounded. For example, the armor on Ahu changed again during the battle with the white-faced one because of long-term resentment and hatred. The appearance after the change surprised the readers, because they looked like Ahu, but now they have become the appearance of the white-faced one. This development is too sudden. Is Feng Guangai Yuan trying to tell us that hatred is the root of everything? Ahu provided the body for the white-faced one to grow, but the white-faced one wreaked havoc, causing many people's tragedies, making many people hate the white-faced one, picking up beast spears to fight the white-faced one, and finally turning into monsters similar to Ahu. Now, because of hatred, these monsters have turned into white-faced ones again. The setting of the chain of hatred is really great. In addition to the fierce battle, the content of that episode received a lot of praise from readers, but the only thing that makes readers feel a little regretful or fortunate is that during the battle between the protagonists, Oshio and Ahu, and the white-faced man, no characters from Natsum appeared. Even today, in the new episode Ushio and Tora, the battle between the protagonist and the white-faced man has reached the final stage, and no characters have appeared so far. The Inuyasha and Nura group that had previously appeared were isolated outside the barrier and could only become cheering and shouting. It was not until this time that readers had the idea that it seems that we have been tricked. The most ridiculous thing for readers is that although some truth emperors or prophecy emperors have appeared on the internet before, completely revealing the conspiracy of cartoonist Hao Kuma, it caused a heated discussion on the internet. However, a certain cartoonist seemed not to have seen or realized these things, and still did not give up using this stock in the Natsum comics, letting the cat teacher, who was responsible for being cute most of the time, reveal some information from time to time in an enigmatic way, continuing to be responsible for mobilizing the appetite of the readers. Yoshida had expected such a situation, so every week when he came to Takahashi Makoto's house to collect the comic manuscripts, he would look at Takahashi Makoto with a rather contemptuous look. As for the suicidal behavior such as ridicule, Yoshida said that he just disdained to argue with the second-year syndrome patients, and was definitely not afraid of someone's monster-level force coercion. Four-eyed fox, how far has your plan progressed? Takahashi Makoto stopped painting, took out his mobile phone from his white coat, and showed a playful smile on his face. Let me tell you first, if my plan to ascend to the altar fails because of your procrastination, I will declare war on you, the kind that will not stop until death. Seeing that Takahashi Makoto actually answered the phone while painting, Yoshida was a little surprised. After all, in his own memory, which was very tragic and miserable, it seemed that Takahashi Makoto hated being disturbed when he was drawing. However, listening to the tone of Takahashi Makoto's voice, Yoshida shook his head helplessly. Although he didn't know who was on the other end of the phone, he felt that it was similar to him, and he was also bullied by Takahashi Makoto. Tisk. It's almost what I expected. Makoto Takahashi stretched his neck to peek in the direction of the bedroom, and continued to speak softly while covering the phone. Although Ogata slime is an ally this time, as I said before, it is also an object that must be guarded against. If that slime really dares to violate the taboo, just kill him decisively, don't worry about the adult you mentioned. I thought it was some evil plan, but it turned out to be just calculating brother Ogata. Looking at Makoto Takahashi constantly cursing someone in a low voice on the phone, Yoshida nodded subconsciously, and then turned his attention back to the comic manuscript in his hand, and no longer asked about Makoto Takahashi's family affairs. Although he was very curious about what Makoto Takahashi wanted to do, countless previous experiences told Yoshida that curiosity would kill people. Although he was not killed by Makoto Takahashi to silence him, being teased to the point of collapse is sometimes more terrifying than death. "Hey, my beloved cat, why are you still here?" After Makoto Takahashi hung up the phone, he looked at Yoshida in surprise, squinted his eyes and picked up the magic sword from the table. "Did you hear what I just said?" "No need to shake your head in panic, no need to explain anything, I understand, but you should also know that only the dead can keep secrets. This is the law of survival in our world, so. What kind of world do you live in?" I say, no, now is not the time to talk about this." Yoshida frowned, pointed at the comic manuscript in his hand, and asked Makoto Takahashi with a melancholy face, "Why did the development of Ushio and Tora become like this? Dust to dust, earth to earth, those who should leave should not stay." Makoto Takahashi naturally understood what Yoshida was referring to, and let go angrily. He put down the magic sword. "A certain alien Gundam once said that there is no victory without sacrifice. If you want to kill a being like the white-faced one, you must pay an equal amount of sacrifice. But if you draw like this, many readers will." Yoshida suddenly stopped talking, looked up and stared at Takahashi Makoto, gritting his teeth and said, "I see, after reading the content of this chapter, readers will definitely complain to the editorial department. You really want to harm the editorial department again?" "The wisdom of mortals," Takahashi Makoto interrupted Yoshida unceremoniously, with an interested smile on his face. "Harming the editorial side is just a side effect this time. But judging from your reaction, the success rate of this battle plan has reached 90%, congratulations, congratulations. Don't be ridiculous." "Ah-chan, you, Yoshida roared out of anger at being calculated. But this behavior that was completely inappropriate for the occasion was interrupted unceremoniously by Takahashi Makoto. "My beloved cat, do you really want to die once, so you choose to do this?" Takahashi Makoto's gloomy expression was something Yoshida had never seen before. Yoshida, who had no idea why Takahashi Makoto was angry, looked at Takahashi Makoto timidly, because the tingling and coldness on his neck told him very realistically that if he continued to make even a little bit of sound, the magic sword called Broken Star would cut off the connection between his body and head without hesitation. "I finally managed to bring the two little ghosts into the dream mode, but now you are trying to wake them up, my cat. I won't say anything else. I will spare your life for now. After the monster era is over, you commit suicide." "Sorry, Chen, I was too excited just now. It's just." "Shut up," Takahashi Chen reminded Yoshida in a low voice, but he was listening to the movement in the bedroom with his ears erect. His eyes were fixed on Yoshida. No, it should be Yoshida's throat, and the magic sword in his hand leaned forward. "Humph. Thank your dog luck, my cat. If those little ghosts are old enough to see blood, I will definitely be here to make the blood-colored flowers bloom." Seeing Takahashi Chen retract the magic sword, Yoshida immediately touched his neck that was scratched, and looked at Takahashi Chen with a wry smile. "Did the death penalty become a suspended death sentence?" "I know what you want to ask." Takahashi Makoto sorted out the scattered comics and handed them to Yoshida. "I can only tell you that drawing like this is an inevitable choice. And as accomplices, you have no right to question me." "What? Accomplices?" "Ah-chan, Are you kidding? Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto with a look of astonishment, snatched the comics, and quickly turned to the last part. It was you who drew this result, and it was just the cartoonist Hao Winkuma. Why do you say we are accomplices? My beloved cat, isn't this what you expected? Takahashi Makoto looked at the comics, with a trace of helplessness on his face. It should be said that it's not just you. More than 90% of the readers hope that the characters in Natsume will appear in the comics. But with the strength of Xiao Chao and Ahu, they can just barely defeat the white-faced one. In order to respond to your complex and twisted mentality, and to make the characters in Natsume appear at the critical moment, Ushio and Toro will have such a result. Huh? That means. Well, it's all because you have too strong expectations, pray too hard, and gather powerful power, so powerful that it can pass through the world's great will to interfere with or even correct my manga manuscript. That's why Chao and Tiger appeared. The result of this pair of good friends being dead and disabled. Although it is very helpless, but, this is the choice of Steins Gate. Looking at Yoshida's completely disbelieving expression, Takahashi Makoto sighed helplessly and said with Yoshida, even though I don't have the same level of understanding, I briefly described it again. Although the original scenes are enough, the readers and editors hope that characters from Natsume will appear. In order to make Natsume appear, the appearance of the characters in the film is rationalized, so this result must occur. Do you understand what I said? Chang, are you saying that because we were too eager to see the character of Natsume in The Tide and the Tiger, it affected you, and then the content of this episode became this result? Seeing Makoto Takahashi nodding in recognition, Yoshida had a depressed expression on his face. Hey, this has nothing to do with readers or editors, it's all your personal preference, right? And what you call the world's great will, it's all nonsense, just to put the blame on us, right? So, it's not you Makoto Takahashi who's wrong, but the whole world? Such absurd values that need to be corrected. Was Makoto Takahashi cultivated by Rua? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi and shamefully admitted such a worldview. He truly felt that the worldview of Shuyuni was indeed within the reach of most people. And because this painting will be more popular, and then the sales of Shonen Jump will also increase. Complaints are complaints. As a bad guy on the editorial side, after knowing my purpose, not only will you not stop, I will encourage me to draw like this. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida, who had a worried expression on his face, and sighed helplessly. Oh, my beloved is a cat, so you guys don't think I'm cruel at all. Qualification, because you are all accomplices. Haven't you heard that saying? If there is no buying and selling, there will be no killing. Yesterday's update, I'm sorry to say that there was a problem with the computer, and it automatically entered an endless cycle of powering on, off, and on again. In addition, there was lightning and thunder outside for more than 3 hours. After checking, it turned out to be a problem with the input method, so I reinstalled it today. After the input method, the computer was broken in an endless loop and it turned out to be sunny outside. Damn it, that input method before was really awesome. Not only could it control the computer, but it could also control the weather. Sorry for not being able to stop. I am sending you a chapter of 4,000 words to express my apology, /U003E:\Omega:\U003C. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 269. Hey, which, when this war in the yokai era ends and I successfully ascend to the altar. Makoto Takahashi, who was drawing, looked at Rina coaxing the children over there, and suddenly called out to form a team. Invitation, let's have a grand wedding. Hey, Makoto-kun, after smoothly agreeing to Takahashi Makoto's words, Rina didn't stay cute for a long time. She just looked at Takahashi Makoto in shock, with an unbelievable light shining in her eyes, and her face remained unchanged. He asked in disbelief, "Chinjun, you mean?" "Eh," the assistants shouted in surprise, and they all looked at Makoto Takahashi with blank faces. After several people looked at each other, Ding Ding, as the leader on behalf of the assistant side, silently asked Takahashi Makoto a question that he already knew the answer to. "I mean, Chan, you and Rina-chan have already given birth to 2 children. A child, but you haven't held a wedding with Rina yet?" "I just said that we have worked with you for such a long time, and we know about the wedding, but you have never attended the wedding. I thought you did it secretly with Rina-chan, but you didn't expect it to happen like this? If Rina-chan's fans find out, I believe you will die without any trace of your body." "Humph. It's just the mortal bones of a swarm of ants." Waving the magic sword in his hand, Takahashi Makoto showed a ferocious smile called bloodthirsty on his face. "My magic sword has already become intolerable. Chang-kun, you." This witch, who already had the dual profession of being a wife and mother, was now bursting with tears and couldn't even finish her words. In the eyes of others, Takahashi Makoto is a Chuyunibu. If he gets along as a friend or colleague, although sometimes he will be driven to the point of going crazy, it will not make people collapse, but once he gets along as a family member's identity appears, it is really a very helpless thing. Ahem, these are Ogata's brother's original words. It is because of Makoto Takahashi's character that he is too middle class, and it is obvious at first glance that he is the kind of character who does not take care of others at all, so Eiji Ogata was firmly opposed to Rina and Makoto Takahashi being together. However, a certain cartoonist, according to a certain master's art of war, focused on attacking the heart and attacking the city as a supplement, first secretly obtained the certificate and registered, and then launched the decisive one-shot into the soul tactic, which made Eiji Ogata gnash his teeth with hatred. At the same time, I reluctantly recognized this Chuyunibu family member. Even Rina, who has always been very familiar with Takahashi Makoto, knows that after being with Takahashi Makoto, it will definitely be quite difficult to live like other women. For example, the wedding ceremony, the wedding ceremony, the wedding ceremony, especially when Rina became the mother of 2 children, although she had never complained about anything, she still felt a little regretful about the wedding. But I didn't expect that Makoto Takahashi would suddenly say such words today, so, forgive Rina for crying with joy. "Hey! Witch, you look so ugly like this. You are the witch who rules the dark world. Crying or something like that will delay the recovery of your magic power." Makoto Takahashi looked at Rina crying and put down the hand in his hand. Paintbrush turned his head and complained, "If that bastard Ogata slime hadn't threatened me and wanted to hire the most powerful assassination organization Night Raid to carry out an assassination operation on me at a high price, I wouldn't have done such a troublesome ritual. No matter how angry Ogata brother is, he will never hire that killer group that he has never heard of, okay?" Combined with the way Makoto Takahashi speaks and the expression on Makoto Takahashi's face, this is textbook tsundere. Several people on the assistant side looked at each other and smiled, looking at Makoto Takahashi's unhappy look, and continued to work with their heads down tacitly. Not to mention how a young couple who showed off their affection tortured a group of singles next to their assistants to death. Yoshida, on the other hand, looked at the manga report card and saw someone's record of killing the manga scores, with a look of dumbfounding on his face. As an editor, Yoshida is quite satisfied with the results achieved by Makoto Takahashi's 3 comics, especially Ushio and Tora, which came from behind. This period was extremely brutal, and it also allowed Yoshida to enjoy his colleagues during this period. Their envious and jealous eyes. But what is also in trouble now is this comic called Tide and Tiger. Just like Yoshida before, for the final battle in Ushio and Tora, both the plot of the animation itself and the quality of the comic manuscript are maintained at a high level, although the precision of the comic manuscript is not as good as it was at the level of the previous metal, but based on the style of Tide and Tiger it's pretty good. Although the white-faced man was trapped in the barrier and faced the combination of Ushio and Tora, he was not at a complete disadvantage. As the final villain, Yakai, of course, cannot be killed so easily. So of course the white-faced man activated his trump card, summoning a large army of monsters to besiege the caster outside the barrier, trying to break the barrier that trapped him from the outside. Facing the massive monsters summoned by the white-faced man, the coalition of humans and monsters gradually fell into a disadvantage. Even the casters who maintained the barrier that trapped the white-faced man were in danger of being breached. Then, the previous scenes of countless monsters and humans fighting together appeared again. The door to the underworld was opened, and countless dead humans and monsters appeared on the battlefield again. In the comic manuscript, many characters were rescued in time by reinforcements from the underworld when they faced danger, although the way of narration makes the comic look a bit confusing. Both readers and editors praised this treatment. Endless. Because every character described is exactly the monsters that Xiao Chao and Ahu have encountered and helped during their previous travels. I'll kill you. I complained before that the journey between Xiao Chao and Ahu was too long. I didn't expect it to be a foreshadowing for the final battle. Sure enough, it is such a scene again, and it is even more exaggerated than before, with reinforcements coming from the underworld. Speaking of which, Inuyasha and Rikuo, who were the protagonists before, are now entangled with several times the number of monsters. Although they don't have the bonus of the protagonist's halo, their strength is still very powerful. Although it has happened once before, seeing such a scene again makes people feel excited. As expected, the Phoenix Academy teacher is very good at controlling the macro situation. Due to work adjustments during this period, the editor-in-chief is not staying in the office as usual, but going to a new department to adapt to work, so now everyone can discuss comics without restraint during working hours. But listening to the discussions and exclamations among his colleagues, Yoshida could only smile bitterly. Sure enough, you shouldn't read the plot of the comic in advance just for the sake of temporary enjoyment. Yoshida looked at his colleagues who were in high spirits, and the corners of his mouth kept twitching, recalling what happened when the manga manuscript was collected last week, and he sighed with depression. Stand up. Greed is indeed the original sin. That's right, the manga manuscript published in this chapter is not what Yoshida saw before. As the editor-in-chief of a cartoonist, Yoshida would naturally not violate some basic rules, such as sharing spoilers with colleagues, so Yoshida knew that Takahashi Makoto hurriedly chased him out with the lame excuse of getting the wrong manga manuscript. As an excuse, I exchanged the comic manuscript in my hand. I definitely wanted to let myself experience this feeling of knowing but not being able to say. Although it is a happy thing to be trusted by a comic book, but this style full of bad taste, can it be said that it is worthy of Makoto Takahashi? As for why Takahashi Makoto is like this, who knows what that Chuyunibu bastard is thinking? Cheng's phone number. Looking at the name on the caller ID, Yoshida wanted to cut off the call directly, but considering the possible horrific consequences, he sighed helplessly and answered the phone. Hey, my beloved cat, something bad is happening. Takahashi Makoto's tone shocked Yoshida. That guy is here, that's right, the defensive barrier that was able to defend against the enemy's noble phantasm was broken through by that guy. Now use the teleportation technique to come over immediately and use the ultimate sealing technique on this guy who entered the barrier randomly. Wait, who is that guy you are talking about? Yoshida has been in contact with Takahashi Makoto for a long time, and has become accustomed to and developed antibodies to someone's Chuyuni behavior. He leaned on the chair and swayed his legs with an indifferent expression. He complained to Takahashi Makoto, although it can be inferred from your previous behavior of deliberately teasing me that you have completed all the manga manuscripts of Ushio and Tora, but today is only Monday, and here American must still be there. I haven't finished the manga, so I won't go to your place today. And the guy you're talking about is probably Ogata Eiji, right? Sorry, I'm not very familiar with him. Hey. My beloved cat, are you really not coming? Makoto Takahashi's voice suddenly became smaller, as if he had turned on the loudspeaker button. A friendly reminder, this is a rare opportunity. Huh? A rare opportunity? Hee hee. Yoshida sneered and sneered disdainfully, it won't be the same as last time. He said he was going on a long trip and asked me to come over in advance to collect the manga manuscripts, but by the time I hurried over, after that, you happily showed off to your assistant and said something boring like, it's also a summoning medium through the phone, but there's a big gap between my familiar cat and Senshin Maru, right? But I did hand over the last manga manuscript to you, Makoto Takahashi complained unhappily on the phone, but even though Yoshida had a sharp ear, he still heard someone whispering, hey. Have you been seen through? Hey, Takahashi Makoto, I heard what you just said, Yoshida sneered here, so I'm sorry, no matter what you say today, I will not go there. I am not here for you to have fun. Toys. There was a strange and inexplicable silence on the other side of the phone, and there was no response for a long time. Just when Yoshida was elated and couldn't help but want to hang up the phone, he suddenly heard Takahashi Makoto's sinister laughter, hey, my familiar cat doesn't want to come, that's basically the situation. Commander. Sir, where is the editor-in-chief? After hearing Takahashi Makoto's words, Yoshida immediately jumped up from his seat. Looking at the editor-in-chief's empty seat, his whole face became extremely colorful. Hey, Aiken, what's wrong with the editor-in-chief? Before Yoshida could finish what he said, Makoto Takahashi hung up the phone decisively. The editor-in-chief should be in the new department at this time, that guy Aiken is definitely lying, yeah, it must be like this, using the name of the editor-in-chief to scare me. Looking at the call end display on the phone, Yoshida comforted himself and cheered himself up, but... this phone. Seeing the words on the caller ID this time turned into the editor-in-chief's name, Yoshida felt terrible. The editor-in-chief can't be really here? Takahashi Makoto, you are such a cunning Chuyunibu, you have ruined me this time. I'm sorry to say that I was on a business trip before, and there was no computer to type in the mountains. I could only squat on the ground and count ants every night. I left too hastily and didn't have time to tell you all, sorry for the break. Sorry. Meow, \U003E caret omega caret \U003C. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 270. Thank you for your care all along, Editor-in-Chief. When Yoshida hurried to Takahashi Makoto's house, he saw a very strange scene. Takahashi Makoto did not say stupid human or ignorant mortal as usual, full of Chuyuni sarcasm, but actually saluted and thanked the editor-in-chief in a very serious and formal way. Bang! In order to confirm that everything he saw was not an illusion, Yoshida slapped himself hard, and as a result, Yoshida, who covered his face, received contemptuous eyes from the editor-in-chief and Takahashi Makoto at the same time. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Hey, Chen, why did the editor-in-chief come to you? Could it be that there is something wrong with the comics again? After recognizing the reality, Yoshida was a little unaccustomed to the normalized Takahashi Makoto, and even his previous skill of changing the subject was not very effective. Yoshida, I remember telling you before that I plan to have a discussion with all the cartoonists before I leave because I'm about to be transferred to another job. The editor-in-chief pushed his glasses, and a smile rarely appeared on his face. Because Takahashi Makoto's home is close to the editorial department, we chose to come here as our first stop. Yoshida had an embarrassed expression on his face, but his eyes were fixed on Takahashi Makoto, who was using his destructive death ray. It was all because Takahashi Makoto was too annoying recently. Yoshida, who had been fooled many times, had already regarded Takahashi Makoto as the kid in a fairy tale who loved to lie all day long. In addition, recently, after the little sea otter successfully established a romantic relationship with Miss Aoki Hong, he lacked the element of melancholy and his creative state dropped significantly. Yoshida, who kept urging the little sea otter, also had to guard against Takahashi Makoto's troubles, so he was tense and busy. So Yoshida had completely forgotten about coming to Takahashi Makoto's home with the editor-in-chief. Sure enough, everything was because of Cheng's second-year syndrome. Well, and that Hiramaru-kun who was immersed in a state of happiness, Takahashi Makoto is the main culprit, and Hiramaru-kun is the accomplice. My beloved cat, it's a good thing that you came here too. There's something interesting, do you want to participate? The weird smile on Takahashi Makoto's face, as well as this kind of questioning culture, made Yoshida feel creepy instantly, but before Yoshida could say anything, Takahashi Makoto suddenly stood up and took out a huge cardboard box from the drawer. This is manga draft. Although Yoshida had never seen the contents inside, he was quite familiar with this box. Looking at Makoto Takahashi with a puzzled look, Yoshida asked in a depressed tone, "Hey, Cheng, what do you want to do by taking out these comic manuscripts now?" "Well, so it's an interesting thing." Makoto Takahashi put the box full of comic manuscripts in front of the editor-in-chief. "Commander-in-chief, can you please take a look at these comic manuscripts?" "Cheng," Yoshida's face turned pale in an instant, and he slapped the table fiercely, "I am your editor-in-chief. Your comics should be given to me first." Although the editor-in-chief will leave Shonen Jump next month, he is still the editor-in-chief now, so. Yoshida was really angry about Makoto Takahashi's behavior this time. Yachin Mumenjai had done the same thing before, directly handing his comics to the editor-in-chief without his editor-in-chief, which was a slap in the face of the editor-in-chief. Yoshida has always believed that Makoto Takahashi has been in the industry for so long, and although he has always been a patient with the second-year syndrome, he should know these truths. However, today, Takahashi Makoto also did such a childish behavior. Thinking of the time he had spent with Takahashi Makoto and Takahashi Makoto's blatant betrayal, the aggrieved Yoshida fell into a state of loss. "Hey, my cat, why are you so excited?" Takahashi Makoto was startled by Yoshida's sudden anger, and his face showed an unhappy look. "Your IQ is comparable to that of a scumbag, and I can guess what you are thinking with my toes. Take a closer look at these comics." These comics are. Although the number of comics is amazing, Yoshida doesn't care about this. "Are these comics really drawn by you, Cheng?" "Well, it's not that I doubt your ability, but to be honest, I was also surprised. This number of comics should be prepared for monthly serialization." The editor put down the comics in his hand, looked at Takahashi Makoto with a puzzled look, and then looked at Yoshida who had the same expression beside him, "And this type of comics is not like the style of the cartoonist Howin Kyoma in my memory. And I'm curious, starting next month I will be in charge of the monthly. How did you know this news?" He, secrets make the devil more demonic." Takahashi Makoto shook his fingers gently, with an expression of on his face. "Secrets make women more feminine," this is Vermouth's catchphrase, and it has become inexplicably weird after being tampered with by you, Takahashi Makoto. Not to mention the editor-in-chief, even Yoshida, who is often brainwashed by Takahashi Makoto's second-year crazy words, can't stand it at this moment. These comics are, firstly, a farewell gift for the commander. Takahashi Makoto gently shook the comics in his hand, with an expression of "the life of a master is lonely like snow" on his face, and continued to explain slowly, "Secondly, I want to complete the previous plan." "Oh," my cat reacted very quickly this time. "That's right, it's the future showdown plan that I have been planning for a long time." "So, what the hell is the future showdown plan?" Facing the editor's puzzled look, Yoshida spread his hands helplessly and shook his head to indicate that he didn't know about Takahashi Makoto's weird plans, and continued to use the question skill on Takahashi Makoto. If I remember correctly, you told me a long time ago that after the end of the monster era, wait, I remember you said. After the end of the monster era, we will enter a new era, an era built by hypocritical humans, an era that is dirty, ugly, and twisted, without love and redemption, a world full of hatred and despair. Takahashi Makoto, who inexplicably entered a strange state, had a ferocious look on his face, but in his remaining right eye, there was a fanatical and crazy light flashing, which made the editor-in-chief and Yoshida on the side feel a chill. This is the second era chosen by the current world line, the social era. That is to say, these comics will not be serialized weekly in Shonen Jump. After seeing that Takahashi Makoto was in the abnormal state, Yoshida continued to complete what he had not finished saying just now, but it will be serialized monthly. It seems that Takahashi Makoto does know something, although I appreciate your kindness, I don't really want you to do this. After a moment of silence, the editor-in-chief explained to Yoshida, who was confused, because of the success of Shonen Jump, the other weekly and monthly magazines of Shueisha are under great pressure. The board of directors decided to let me be the monthly magazine. The editor-in-chief hopes to run the monthly magazine well, but I don't think that relying on one or two comics by a cartoonist alone can help a monthly magazine get out of its current predicament. Commander, are you mistaken? Takahashi Makoto smiled confidently. Since Messiah can create miracles, Zero can rebel against the entire empire, and Tsukushi can change the world, then as the new world god, I can do the same. Because I am a crazy cartoonist, the devil of healing and love, how Inkuma. The editor-in-chief and Yoshida looked at someone full of madness, and they shook their heads at the same time with a high synchronization rate. Takahashi Makoto's second-year syndrome is incurable. Ahem, let me tell you in advance that a certain cat seems to be possessed by a certain tumor recently and has had many accidents. Today, both the bank card and the bus card broke on the way, the mobile phone screen was broken, the key fell into the toilet, and the USB flash drive carrying the novel manuscript also died unfortunately. Then, I was betrayed by that teammate, resulting in being besieged by a group of unreasonable old grandfathers and grandmothers for the whole afternoon. I didn't finish any work, and missed the last bus after working overtime. I had to walk home without an umbrella in the rain. Ah, the malice and misfortune of the whole world.